Hi, friends. Good morning. We're here. Welcome to Unlocking Your Child's Potential, Navigating ADHD.
Yes, we're glad to be here today. We're going to be talking about some amazing breakthroughs and things that we've learned along the course in our way after 34 years in healthcare. I'm going to make some technical changes, as you can see behind us. That was a little change. So we're going to have some
Hi,
really,
everyone who's joining.
we're going to have very organic things going on here as we're talking, and we're so happy you joined us. So I'm going to roll it over to the center director on our campus here at Bagnell Brain Center, May Bagnell.
Well, first of all, before we do that, let's just first of all talk about like where everyone's at, right? So we're talking about unlocking ADHD, and we're talking about understanding the potential of your child. And the problem can be for some people is that the frustration that people have in regards to understanding ADHD and understanding how to take care of their health. So for some of you, you are just finishing school, or at least your children are. For some of you, you have completed high school maybe and gone through this whole process. We work with children, very early from 3 to 4 years old up to seniors in high school that we currently have under care. So this process of ADHD can be part of a process for a long time inside of a family. But we do know that for parents, the topic of school and ADHD is such a hot topic because they want what? They want their child to excel in school. So part of what we're going to be discussing today through this process is helping you understand what are some of the things that are happening with the ADHD brain specifically, and also what you can do about it, because we want to give you the empowerment as a parent, right?
That's right. We want to give you the empowerment. Sorry, we had a couple of different things going on because this is the way it is when you're live. All kinds of things happen in this world, especially. But yes, I mean, this is really something unique. And again, now we're going to have another little interruption here. So I think you're going to need to grab that.
Oh my goodness.
Go ahead. So anyway, this is kind of like what happens with the ADHD brain, right? You have this and this going on, but yet you need to focus here. You need to focus in the center of what's really vital to you. So let's have a little restart. But no, actually, this is where we are. And it's a perfect example, right? This is someone's brain. I have that, I have this, but I need to be here. And I need to be able to be focused, attention, and concentration. And this is a huge thing with so many adults and so many young people. But who we are, you've already explained that, who we are?
No, I haven't.
All right. So Dr. Mike Bagnell in healthcare with my wife, really in our one practice for 34 years. And our practice has gone through an evolution in helping people, in healing, in delivering healthcare. It's gone from areas in, of course, physical medicine, which many of you know us. And there's been a lot of depth of research and advancement in terms of improving the physical or somatosensory care for people, helping their body to function better with their brain. Yeah. And then we moved more and added functional medicine training. So we understand how does the metabolic system, how does nutrition, how do the genomics affect someone's health?
Yes.
That was a very big part when we wove that in to what we were doing. And then we moved further into the brain-based model. And the brain-based model is the area where now we can really make a big difference in someone with ADHD and other types of brain conditions. But ADHD is our focus, and ADD, both of those conditions. The challenge for people with focus, attention, and concentration. And then how that spills over into so many other areas of their life, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's emotional, whether it is substances trying to get their brain to work better, whether it's medication, personal relationships, interpersonal. But really, our journey has brought us to a point where we've been able to amass an understanding of how to deliver a product where it's repeatable, sustainable, and people get the result with improving their child's attention and focus.
Yeah. So that's really why we're here today. We're here today because we work with families day in and day out. And we're currently working with quite a few patients, children who are dealing with ADHD symptoms, and successfully so. And, we have found a pathway and a way forward that has created sustainable results to what you were saying. And it's really just miraculous to us. And it's wonderful to watch the results of the children. And then, of course, the parents' feedback of how their child is doing, not only at school, but at home. Because we also know that it seems like the ADHD topic is very hot in school, because why? The children are struggling to stay on topic. They're struggling to stay focused in the classroom. The teachers are giving the parents a lot of feedback. The parents are getting very frustrated and overwhelmed about it. But we also know that this affects their whole life. It isn't just about their academic life. It's their social life. It's their home life.
Yes.
And so to watch their children be returned is really a wonderful thing. So that's what we're here today.
One of our moms said the other day, actually, she brought in her older son, her teenager, for some help. And she said about her younger son, who we've worked with attention deficit issues in the past, she said, you gave him back to us better than we started.
Yeah.
We're like, wow, that is a wonderful statement, because he's doing so marvelously at this point, and he's much older now. So yeah, let's get into really these things that are a parent's desire for their children. And I'm going to let my wife speak to you on this, because she's the first point of contact here. When people reach out to us through the website, or they find us on Google for things related to the brain, or they're referred to us, which is the larger bulk. They talk to her first. And so she hears where these parents are, what they're dealing with. And I'd like you to really just elaborate on that delicately as you do, and
absolutely,
empathically. So I'm going to step out and let you do that. Okay.
Great. Yeah. And I have some notes for myself, because I wanted to keep myself on task. But I do want to say, a couple things. A lot of times when I am the first point of contact. And so then when the parents call, we get to have this conversation about, what's going on for their child. And, ordinarily, someone might be thinking of everything that's frustrating about the situation or the painful aspects of this. But, I want to start with first the promise, right? Because obviously the parents are calling with the concern they have for their child, but they're calling for what? They're calling because they have a higher vision and a higher idea of what they would love for their child, and yet they know their child is struggling and they feel uncertain on how to help them. So let's talk about the promise. And here are some of the things, after doing this for many, many years, I have my own research of what parents have taught me about what's going on for them in their home. And so by them teaching me this, it helps us create a better approach that is not only addressing the issues for the child, but it's also addressing the concerns that the parents have. And that's very important to us. So let's talk about a couple of things that parents tell me. What the promise that they seek for their children. Number one is that they want confidence for themselves, right? A strong self-confidence. They would love their child to be more confident around their peers. They would want their child to have greater interest in academics, which seems to be like the hot topic we talked about earlier, right? And also to have interest in art or sports. So confidence and interest, right? It says if any of this is ringing any bells for you, or any of this resonates with you, let us know in the chat here or comments, because I feel like this strikes a nerve for a lot of the parents. It's been very, very across the board. It's been a common denominator. And then the other two things would be the ability to self-regulate and the ability to perform well. And what we have found success in is to be able to understand these promises, and also to help deliver on these promises. How? Through understanding their child's personal brain formula and being able to target specific therapies to help their child. All right. So we've talked about the promise, right? Confidence, ability to self-regulate, perform well. These are all things we can understand. Now, some of the frustrations that the parents have also given us insight into is that their child, let's say, for example, is falling behind in school, or the child is lacking focus in school. Maybe the teacher is sending home notes or having parent-teacher conferences with the parent because the child is not paying attention, or maybe creating an inability for the teacher to flow properly through her process, his or her process. Also, another piece would be taking a long time to finish tasks, whether it's homework, chores, or anything else. It takes the child a long time to finish a task. And then also how this is maybe disrupting home life with other siblings and so forth. So So these are some of the concerns and the frustrations that parents have come to us. But remember, it's all through the lens of the promise, the lens of what they're really hopeful for their child and what they would like. Now, it's always important to interject right here. Um, as a coach, I think it's important that we all be mindful that we are not trying to make our child to be like other children, right? It isn't about trying to make them as the same as other children or to make them feel badly about themselves. We are very, very conscientious about all the work that we do with our children. It is about empowering them. It isn't about talking about what's wrong. It's talking about, what's potential, and we do that through understanding them, understanding, their personal interests, right? The things that they love. And a lot of times what we like to do, my husband's really good at this, is he learns some of the specific things that the child likes, and then we might use that as a way of rewarding their performance here in the clinic. So someone said, my son is lacking social skills. We understand that. Is it Iris? I think that's your name. We understand that. That is definitely part of what our parents have told us on the front end of working with us. And I just want to encourage you, Iris, that if you or other parents that are here are dealing with that, that is very common. But we have also seen children be restored back to that. And I want to interject a story here of a little girl who came to us years ago. She had a lot of challenges neurologically, ADHD being one of them. And upon examination and assessment, we learned that there was a lot of things that were affecting her brain. So without going into great detail here, we assessed that, we understood what her personal brain formula was, and we started to effectively change and alter the therapies that was necessary for her. So she did really well. She came consistently. And then a little while throughout the protocol, the mother came to me one morning and she said, as she was working with Dr. Bagnell, she said, is it possible that the work that we're doing here is helping her be more social? And I said, well, tell me more. And she said, she says, I would always want to get her to be taking lessons of some kind, do gymnastics, piano, all these different things. But she, little by little, was pulling herself away from all of the social things that she was doing before. And she says, but now, not only is she improving in school, she's asking for extracurricular activity. She's asking me to be involved in this or that or the other. And I said to her, well, you know what? I said, I absolutely believe that's possible, because when you effectively change the brain networks, you're effectively changing multiple things that's going to affect the person. And so this is not the first story or not the last story that we're going to hear in that, but be encouraged that that can happen and it is possible. And that story still very warms my heart a lot. So let's continue and let's talk about what parents have told me, because part of what the conversation in our brain health audit call that we do, which is complimentary, is to understand what they've already tried. Because we want to know, okay, what have the parents already tried and what has been the feedback? So here are a couple things that parents have told us. They've tried medication. That probably is aware to most of us. They've tried behavior modification. They've tried tutoring, and they've tried supplementation. And while all of those things have maybe had some benefit, maybe short-term benefit, they were not sustainable, is the feedback that we're getting from the parents. And part of that is because there was side effects with the medication. Maybe at the beginning it helped, but then there were side effects to the child. Then there was the frustration with the tutoring. The child didn't want to do it. There was a lot of pushback. And then also sometimes the behavior modification or the discipline backfired, creating some chaos in the home. So we're not saying that any of those things were necessarily wrong approaches. They may not be targeted approaches. And that's what we're wanting to do here. Our goal is to create targeted approaches that are very customized to the child, not just cookie cutter, because not one approach is going to work for everyone. And so we've discovered that there's a way to create successful outcomes. and beautiful outcomes, for the child. And right now it's a really important time for parents because they're finishing the school year and now they have their mind set on the next school year. And if this year has been frustrating and concerning, they're curious and wondering and feeling a bit uncertain of how the next school year may unfold. So if this is something that resonates with you, the child is having a lack of confidence, a lack of interest, or a lack of ability, we have discovered a way to have sustainable outcomes, and really just help us understand your child better will allow us to be able to create those outcomes. So, we'd like to speak more about some of these approaches. I'd like my husband to come back on here and let him take over a few of those steps for you as well.
It's really well said. I mean, covering those things, it's like, what do you really want for your child? What do you really want? I really like that question because, as human beings, especially here on social media, it's talk. But what do you really want? And what we want also as parents, because we're parents and grandparents. So first is what is your real desire for your child? I love how you covered that. And then what are you struggling with? What is it doing in the environment? The environment of your child and the environment of your home, the environment for school, because we want the children to be successful. That's what I was writing on. We have a board back here. I was writing on the board. We want them to be successful, confident and successful in what they're going after. Whether it's academic, whether it's sports, as you mentioned, whether it's in the arts. We want them to be successful in their relationships. And that means it's working. It's bringing out who they really are, these wonderful young people, and giving them back to us in a way that they're able to enjoy their life, and we're able to enjoy them to the fullest as well. So you've heard of many things that people have tried. And yes, there are some kinds of results, but there are side effects, especially with meds. My child was like a zombie. They didn't want to eat. They didn't feel themselves. They felt disconnected all the time. This is very common. Well, they were doing better in the focus. And then in the summer, many times, as you mentioned, they take them off the meds to kind of let them have a break. And so that's something that didn't really work well. Or even the parents who it's working with, they would say, I don't want to have to do this forever. What else are my options? They don't know. There's uncertainty. What are my options?
Right.
So here's what has happened. My wife mentioned targeting. When you can understand what's going on in areas of the brain, the frontal lobe, the back of the brain, the cerebellum, the temporal lobes, when you can understand what's going on, then you can start to say, there's an imbalance. That network or that region, it's not really connecting properly. And that could be contributing to why they have a problem, why they can't focus, why their attention or concentration, why their emotional state is also fluctuating with that. So understanding, and this really, you can think about it militarily, right? You have to have a target and a map to get to your destination. Even if you're hiking, you're not a military person. You're hiking, you better have a map to where you're going. Or you're driving, I need a map to where I'm going. I need my GPS. So we focus, and we've determined over the years, we need a map of these people's brains, these children, or even in many cases, adults. We have adults that have come in and gotten very good results with ADHD. They've learned how to live with it, how to manage it more, but they're still operating on top of a lot. And so we like to help them really be able to relax their brain. So getting a map. So this is what we've discovered in our journey. We've discovered that there is a way to get to the result sustainably, consistently, and it starts with a map of the brain, understanding what's going on in the brain. And from there, we can then target or create a specific brain formula for that young person or adult to get to the destination with measurable outcomes, with data, rather than uncertainty, which vitamin, which medication, where do I go, who do I call, who's the expert. So this is our heart, is we've now got repeatability in this. We've been able to do this with person after person after person, and have wonderful results that are measurable, and then have the outcomes shared with us from the parents, right, on their subjective side. We have the objective data that gives us the subjective. So this is very exciting, because when you're able to put things together and then create it in a repeatable way, and it's showing the results that you're looking for, now you have something, right? Now you have something marvelous.
Yeah, so I just want to step in and interject something, because I know that a lot of what happens in our day to day is when you're interacting with parents, especially in the beginning stages, they're coming to you with like so much information, right? Like what is the issue that parents have with so much information?
Well, they don't know what to do. We'll use vitamins for an example. Well, what vitamins should I take? What should I give them? And so they're inundated with information.
Yeah.
There's just so much information. They saw it on different groups on Facebook or Instagram, or maybe some on TikTok have mentioned that. They find things in social media most of the time, or they Google something, and they're coming with so much information they do not know where to start.
Right. They don't know where to start. That's a good point. And so then part of what you do and part of what we get to do is to look at all that information, but set that aside for a moment, and then really look at the child,
right,
and understand the child first, and then be able to look at what of that information would be suitable for the child. Because while there's a lot of good information, it's not appropriate for every person.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have a large suite of therapies, as you know, right? All different types of therapies that would be applicable for changing the brain function. But we need to know what's best for them.
Yeah.
So we have to understand their brain. And that's part of the journey in getting you to the destination, which is something that is possible. Absolutely.
And then what's one of the other challenges that we also have seen parents have a lack of clarity, right? What does that look like when the parents are talking with you and they're lacking clarity, or what is it they're desiring?
Well, they're really desiring some kind of solid solution, right? That they know is working, because they're not certain if something's working. I've tried this, but we're not sure. I've tried that, but I'm not really sure, because they never had any measurement to start with to know if it made a change.
That's right.
Right.
That's a good point.
So if you don't have a gas gauge in your car, how do you know when it's running out of gas? You do not know. So
right.
You need measurements. You need gauges to give you an understanding. And when you work in this area of neuroscience like we do, then you have ways to measure, whether it's measuring eye movement tracking, whether it's measuring cognitive testing, whether it's all these different measurements we have. Pupil responses can tell us about the brain. So measurements give you objective data, then you target the therapy, and then you remeasure.
Yeah, right. And then that also then brings to another probably concern that I hear a lot of parents is just uncertainty, right? Like, will this work? What if this doesn't work? I've tried all these different things. What do you say to that, to parents? I know what I say to that, but what do you say to that?
Well, I always go back to whether it's a child or an adult, is we want to start with some measurements of their brain, because I think you have the two kind of camps. One's like, I don't know where to start. I have no idea. And the other ones who are kind of starting somewhere, but they're kind of throwing things against the wall and see what sticks. We're going to try that with nutrition. We're going to try high dose omegas. We're going to try A, B, C. We're going to try, and maybe some of those things stick for a little while or they don't. But again, you don't have a measurement. And without a measurement, you're kind of going in a way where you're not 100% certain that it will have an effect, right?
Yes.
So you would not want to give me, let's see, what's a good, in terms of pharmaceuticals, right? You wouldn't want to give me an antidepressant if I have inflammation in my ankle.
Right.
It doesn't make sense.
Right.
I have an ankle injury, an inflammation, so maybe an anti-inflammatory would be better, or vice versa. Someone with depression, you wouldn't give them an anti-inflammatory. Oh, actually, you might, because now we know inflammation does affect the brain, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But you see the point. We want to give the proper approach to the proper way the brain's functioning or not functioning, so that we get the best outcome for that person.
Yeah. And I just want to stop for a minute and just address a couple comments. So someone said that medication made their son aggressive. Yes, we have heard that too. We're sorry that happened. And then someone else asked a question. I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but they said primitive reflex work is so hard for an 11-year-old. Can we still get help with it? Yeah.
This is great, because this is one of those things, is these things are too hard with my child.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because those are some of the limiting things, like it's too difficult. Yes, you can do it with an 11-year-old, and you just have to have someone who's trained with primitive reflexes,
right,
and who has the ability to modify them based on what that child, everything has to be modified and specified. Yes, that's what we're trained in.
Yeah.
To modify it, right? So some parents have gone on, now you're getting deeper, which is beautiful. Some parents have gone on YouTube, they found the primitive reflex exercise, they think their child has this, or they were diagnosed with it, and then they're trying to do it, but it's difficult for them. So we need to develop solutions and strategies, which we have in functional neurology in our approach. That's part of the approach. That's a wonderful question.
Yeah, great question. And any of you that are here, if you have additional questions, feel free. I'll try to catch them and address them. We will have a little more time for questions towards the end, but if you have them now, we're happy to do that. Part of another thing, so that's some of the concerns parents have. Another area, that we also know, I get this a lot from parents, is that they feel that their neurologists or other doctors have been dismissive of their concerns of their child, and that and again, I'm not trying to, do anything derogatory. Everyone has their approach. But this is just the experience that the parents have had, that they feel dismissed. Right. Because a parent is very intuitive, right? You may not be a doctor, but if you're a parent and you're watching this, you are very, very intuitive to your child, more so than we will ever be, because it is your child. And you know the differences between when your child is doing well and when your child is there's something off. And sometimes you can't put your finger on it because you don't really know what's happening, but you know something's not right. And then parents will say, well, the doctor sent us for all the tests. We've done MRIs, we've done this study, we've done that study, we've done all the blood work, we've done different things, all the blood work. And everything is fine on paper. My child is fine. And then so they'll just prescribe a medication, maybe to balance the attentional issue or to balance whatever. And but it's not a sustainable solution, as we've already addressed. And also it comes with those side effects that we don't want. So our parents, when they come here and we talk with them about what our approach is, they like it because they feel heard, they feel understood. Yes. And my goal when I have those brain health audit calls, which is the initial call, is to make sure that I'm really listening for what the parent is telling me. Right. Because it isn't about what I need to tell them. I want to learn from the parent, and we want to make sure that this is the next right fit for them to approach for their child. But anyway, so I wanted to interject that a lot of times parents feel dismissed by their doctors, and we would pray that we would never be those to do that. If anything, we want to be very open and have honest conversation about where a parent is with their child, and then speak about what it is that we do to make sure that we're a proper fit for what's next. And then another concern that parents have is like, how do I find the time to do this? In the school year, sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge, to come for regular therapy. But we have orchestrated a way to be able to do this in a modified approach that has been very successful and sustainable, so that parents play an important role in this, but that we also are creating a guided approach. Because a lot of times parents will go on YouTube, but listen, I do this all the time when I'm searching for something in YouTube University, right? And we're at the mercy of who's paid more for their advertisement, and then we're kind of sucked into like what's next there. But by having guided approach, will provide you insight, and so that we can know specifically what your child needs and doesn't need. That's and right. In what order to do them.
That's right. Yeah, and let me just tell you a quick kind of example, a testimony or case study, if you will, of a young boy who was brought in with attention deficit hyperactivity, diagnosed, mom of 2 kids. She's a teacher, so she's very aware of what's going on, and she was looking for an option. And so as she came in and we started working, understanding what was needed in his brain, number 1, what was needed. Number 2, providing that therapy consistently to get those brain circuits stronger. And number 3, looking at lab work with him. You know what we discovered? So this is one component that was specific to him. He had a dairy sensitivity, or you could say allergy, that was very high on the labs. And when we had her and the family remove dairy from his diet, guess what happened? Although he was already improving, he even improved just dramatically more. He had improvement over 4 weeks, and he dramatically jumped up from there. And so these are the kinds of things when you're looking at, and you need to know what to look at, right? You said, well, what am I going to ask my doctor for? You're not. We're going to give you that guided approach, because these things help understand what's necessary for that child in particular, and the therapy that's necessary for them to target those regions: gut health, brain health, right side of the brain, left side of the brain. That's what we do, is help kind of guide that direction, so that it is something that has a higher resolution, right? Like a higher resolution in terms of the result. You're getting closer to getting the proper result because you're getting closer to where the issues are.
Yeah, I like that. And when I speak to parents on the phone, part of what we talk about is exactly that. And I alluded to, your child's brain has the ability to heal.
Mm-hmm.
It has the ability to function at a higher level. But there are these hindrances, not only neurological hindrances, but there could be metabolic hindrances.
Yeah.
In my mind, my vision is like, I'm getting ready to run a race. I've got all the ability to run, but something is holding me back. Something is holding my t-shirt back, and I am, running in place really, really hard, performing really, really well in place, but I can't go because something is holding me back, right? Yeah. So that's true for what you're just talking about. Yeah. Is it a dairy issue? Is it a gluten issue? It could be a variety of different things. So by looking at the neurology and also looking at the metabolics, we're looking at, what are these things that are working together or maybe working against each other that we could eliminate? And then what can we add to help balance that?
Right. If you're listening to this and you're saying, this sounds really interesting, the brain health audit is the way to kind of begin the process of discussion, finding out, is this a good fit for my family and I? And I'll mention a word here, which I haven't mentioned. I kind of left it out earlier. Neurotiming. Neurotiming. You may not have put that word together, not that you would. But the brain has a timing mechanism, a system of timing. And when you think about a lack of focus, being distracted, not getting things done on time, always being late, which are all kind of components of someone with ADHD, it's a timing system issue. There used to be a thing in the cars where there's a timing belt. They don't have it, I don't think, anymore. And the timing belt helped the car stay in tune. And so the timing system of the brain, there are even things called clock neurons in the brain. And this is part of the essence of where we're going in the brain to improve timing systems in the brain related to areas that we determine in the beginning. But time, I'm coming back to time because time is one of those factors outside. You say, this is amazing. I think this is something I should look into, but I don't have the time. So time is something very important for all of us. We agree with that. Like I said, 3 adult kids, 4 grandchildren.
4 grandbabies.
So we have a lot on our plate to take care of and help. But also time now investing in these children makes all the difference in the future, because there is a lot of time you have to invest in the future with people who are having difficulty going on in their adult life.
Yeah.
So time is really of the essence. And that's why we developed a virtual platform, a virtual platform for people to be able to start accessing guided direction through our approach that brings us to that sustainable result.
Yeah. Yeah. And so things like, being able to build the health of your child's brain from home with a guided approach, right? Finally having clarity around, what specifically your child needs.
Right.
Also feeling more confident in and certain that this direction that you're helping your child in is going to satisfy the issues that the child's brain is dealing with, right? It isn't just about, let's try this new approach. We're working on specifics to try to help the hindrances that your child is having.
That's right.
And then really just to have us to guide you in that whole process. And we do that every day, like I said, in the clinic, but we also have expanded to create a virtual program because I field calls regularly where parents have heard us or seen us on a podcast, and they would like to work with us, but they live in California or they live in Pennsylvania or Colorado, where they might be. And while they might still choose to come and experience one of our immersive experiences here, which is possible, there is a lot that we do virtually on the front end to really already begins the process to set the foundation for any activation. However, in-person is not absolutely necessary. The way we've crafted our virtual program is so that a lot of this can be done from home without someone to have to travel here. But having that immersive program is something someone could elect to do.
Yeah, and it's just marvelous. So even if they begin on the virtual, down the road, they could come in for an immersive time as well.
Correct.
And so these are different components that we've been able to develop over the years, showing a sustainable result, a result that's measurable, and really getting our kids back to the success in their own lives that we would really hope they all enjoy.
Yeah, so let's see if I have some questions here. So Iris asked, How do you deal with perfectionism? He hates making mistakes. Yeah, that's not uncommon. Depending on the age of your child, uh, there could be, some coaching strategies around that, Iris, which could be really helpful. Aside from that, the neurotiming is probably an important piece of that, right?
Key piece to that.
Yeah.
Yes. Key piece to that. And the reward process in that is very important. Actually, we have a young boy that we're working with currently who has that. When he doesn't achieve something in some of the brain training, he gets very frustrated very quickly and starts completely losing his focus. So we're working with that in him. And everyone is unique. There's not like, oh, just do this thing. Oh, just take that supplement. That's what neuroscience shows you. That's what functional neurology is showing us, that you have to look at the brain. Although everyone has the brain, although some people, they don't know if they have a brain, right? Everyone has a brain, has the same lobes, but the way it operationally functions is different. And that's what's important in this. So there's way too many things we could say about that, and it would belabor the point, but it's not an easy situation. We realize how difficult that can be for you and for parents. And yeah, we empathize. And so neurotiming is important. The things that knowing you that you've already invested in with your son is marvelous. And part of that is as they get older, like my wife said, I think then you get into the more cognitive coaching aspect with them as they get a little more development. Sometimes that can be a great help as well. How do you do the brain mapping? So when you're in the office, in the facility, we will run a CAP and an EEG, and we will run that process, collect the data, and then look at the brain map. When you're remote, it works a little differently. We would have to send you to a center, but we don't have to run a brain map with an EEG. We have other ways to analyze the brain function.
Right.
And that's part of the virtual platform.
Right. So, and that's part, and it's a good question that you're asking, because that is part of the gathering of data, the assessments that we're looking for, because that's going to give us how we're going to do the approach, right? So that's a really good question. But there's so much that we can talk about that. And if you're interested in learning more, just for the sake of the time here, if you're interested in learning more, you are able, just want to remind everyone, you're able to book that health audit call or brain health audit call through our website. It might be on our link tree ultimately, but I don't think it's there today. But you could find it on our website, and you can just book a call and say you watch this live and you'd like to book that call. It is complimentary. We'll spend about 30 minutes together, and then we'll be able to learn a little bit more about your particular situation, your specific concerns, and then how we would approach that for you.
That's right.
So let's see. Psychotic teaming. I think she meant to write something else. Teaming issues?
Well, the saccadic eye movements or fast eye movements are ways that we do measure brain function.
Right.
So that's an important aspect. And so to be measured, though, that's the thing. We use specific technology to measure eye movement tracking, which is what someone is asking about. That tells us about the brain. And if you know how to interpret that data, you can understand the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, the frontal lobe. You can understand the components and how they affect the different eye movements. So that's a great question. That's, again, more advanced. But those are ways that we analyze the brain. Those are the types of activities that specifically, non-invasively analyze the brain function. Right.
Really powerful.
Yeah.
So another commenter earlier was saying that her child is now 27 years old. So yeah, so an adult, right? Not even a young adult, getting into close to the 30s. So a lot of coaching strategies are really useful for adults in dealing with perfectionism. But in order for us to understand those things, it's also important to understand the timing of the brain, understand what is happening, and do a full assessment. And then we can kind of point back. And then the other thing too is, we want to understand why the person is dealing with perfectionism, right? What is the underlying belief system that the person has? And there's multiple, right? It's not the same for everyone. So like you said, it's not a one approach fits all, but by understanding the individual, we can absolutely learn and then be able to utilize the belief systems that they currently have to be able to facilitate some transformation in the thinking to give them a little bit more of a, right? Like it doesn't have to be this way. But if there's neurological components that could be that hindrance, that someone pulling you from the back, like I mentioned earlier, that could be something that's hindering him. So We're going to be here for just a little bit longer. So if you have any additional questions, around ADHD, around our program, or anything else that you have concerns about for yourself, this doesn't have to be just for your child. If it's, we have phone calls every day with adults telling us that they didn't get diagnosed as ADHD until they were adults, right? Yeah. And so a lot of muscling through life, as I like to say, and having to kind of figure it out. But then once they understood, then there was a little bit of a breathing room, like, oh, okay, my life makes a little bit more sense now. And then they could give themselves, permission to do what they need to do and to be able to get the support that they need in that process.
Yeah, because attentional issues, or ADHD, could be a component or a symptom of someone who's on the spectrum. Could also be a component of someone who is dealing with PTSD or complex PTSD. Could also be a component of someone who's dealing with underlying anxiety or depression, yeah, or OCD. But the front symptom that they're talking about they want help with is ADHD. And so the challenge in that is, if you don't know what the background is, right? If you don't realize, let's use Asperger's as a kind of an example, or someone on the spectrum. If you don't realize that they are, and you're treating the ADHD with a medication, you could actually be causing them more distress, even though they might focus on what they want to, the work, but their emotional health, their psychological health might be even more deteriorated, because maybe you're now driving a dopamine supplement where someone, oh, I realize, first of all, that they're on the spectrum. Number one, oh, that's affecting their attention. Oh, okay. So now we're dealing with helping them to understand what the background is. Oh, the background is that you actually had trauma, and that trauma being suppressed is what's now driving this attentional problem. So would you want to treat the attention problem, or would you want to deal with the trauma? Because you can discharge that trauma through different types of approaches. It's in the brain. We understand the brain. We sent someone recently. The first thing you need to do is you need to get some work done with trauma resolution. At the same time, we can train the brain because you have this issue. Right. So you see how they're tandemly working? But when you don't know what the background is, this is why it always comes back to what is going on in the brain. Yeah. And so for us to get you or someone to the destination, we need to have a map. And our map helps us lay all those things out in the front end.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, this has been really good. Iris, thank you. Thank you for being here and answering, asking your questions. I know it's helpful for the group. So what would you say in summarizing for our folks who are listening? What would be some next steps that are important for them to think about?
Well, I think it's really important to take the next step and to do a brain health audit with you, because that's continuing conversation. It's one thing, and you and I know this, to take in information and to think on it. And you need to think on it. But to think on it and think on it and think on it without actually, let me step into just something that's the next step of action. So I'm understanding more. Like when I'm interested in something, I'm going to the computer, right? We're Googling it. I'm looking it up. I'm reading about it. I'm trying to learn about it, just like you would, perhaps. So this would be the way to do that. You can look through our website. You can schedule a call. I mean, that's just the way to go, because it's more in action than just sitting back. And that was very interesting.
Right.
Because we would want you to find some help and hope.
Right, absolutely. Right. And that's really what we're about.
That's right.
We're very motivated and inspired to get the results in our clients that help them to get back to their life, to reclaim their life, to reclaim whatever it is that they are meant to do and purpose to do. And for those of you that are just joining us here later, this will live in our Instagram account so that you can go back and listen to all the content. But just as a wrap, this approach is an inside out approach, as I like to say, right? It's not an outside in approach. It's inside out first, because we understand what the rooted mechanisms, what are the things that are going on neurologically, to your point, neurotiming, electrical patternings of the brain, metabolic aspects. It's a multi-tiered approach, but all, again, targeted approach, right? Targeted information helps us to deliver a targeted approach that gives us a sustainable outcome. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for sustainability, not just for immediacy of relief of symptoms, even though that happens throughout the process. That doesn't get us to sustainability. We want that sustainable result. That's and for these young people to go on in their lives, You mentioned a story earlier, and I'll just wrap us now with a mom brought her older son to us now for concussion recovery from a recent concussion. But in the previous years, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, had brought her younger son to us who was dealing with ADD, ADHD. Mm-hmm. And we worked with him for a period of time in a protocol that was customized to him. And then, he was off, we didn't see them for a while, and we just hoped everything was great. Well, when she brought in the older son, I happened to ask about her younger son. And she goes, oh my gosh, she goes, you guys gave him back to me better than he ever was. Not only is he in love with school, is he doing well with school? He is on top of his subjects. I don't have to be on top of him with his homework. He's always letting me know that he has everything ready. He's calmer at home. He's just a totally different, well, he's not totally different. He's just better than he ever was. Always a beautiful child. But from those aspects, she could see that the benefit to his brain has helped him so that he could what? So that he could feel self-confident. Right. Back to that. So that he could feel able, so that he could feel inspired to do the things that he wants to do in his life. Right. And oh my gosh, that was just amazing for us to hear that 3 or 4 years later, this young man, who is now a young man, is doing so well. So it's powerful for us. Right. This is understanding ADHD holistically and solving the neurologic puzzle. That's right. That's what it's all about. That's right. Good. Well, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out in the DMs. Remember, you can go to bagnellbraincenter.com. You can book your brain health audit call there. It's completely complimentary, and we'll be able to learn more. And we're here. What's in the link tree on the Instagram? What's in there? You have I don't know. I think, accessibility. Well, yes, we have different things on there. We're continuing to add more to that. But podcasts, all of those things are available on our website. So if you want to learn more and hear more about the things, interviews and things that we've done, you'll find them there. Yeah, and the website link is on the Instagram. So absolutely. They can go right there. Yep. Okay, so you have all you need. You have an amazing day. Have an amazing day. And just finally want to say that we are going to be doing some brain training weeks in the summer for children who are dealing with ADHD. And if that's of interest to you, feel free to let us know that that's something you'd be interested in learning about. Yeah. If it's an in-person program that you're looking for. Right. All right. Have an amazing Thursday, everyone. Okay. And we'll see you soon. God bless.